David Victorson, welcome. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you talking with me, and wanted to start right in and ask you. So, True North Treks, that's a nonprofit that you helped start years ago. Can you talk about that a little bit, like what they do, and kind of get into that a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. True North Treks has been around since 2008 is when we incorporated. I'm a co-founder along with my younger brother Scott, his wife Gwen, and my wife Gretchen. And I grew up really appreciating nature in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. My dad was a fisherman and a hunter, and so every vacation and weekend, pretty much it seems we would be out in the woods or on the water in some capacity, and that left a mark in terms of just my overall need for nature connection
Yeah.
and also the importance of nature on my emotional health and well-being and feeling restored and reconnected. Fast forward many years into grad school, we went obviously to the same program and, working for me, a lot of my focus was working in health environments. So everything from spinal cord injury to cancer. And then after graduating, I went to my postdoc was in psychosocial oncology, where I was working as a psychologist or a postdoc in a cancer clinic, working daily with people getting their treatment. And I was in my late 20s, early 30s, just had my daughter, and I was coming into rooms of people who looked like me, who were at the same age level as me.
Yeah.
And I have to say, there was a bit of I had several moments of, wow, this is, just it freaked me out that they were going through what they were going through, and many of them would die. And it just opened my eyes to young adult cancer survivors.
Right.
Usually you see the TV commercials of the little kids from St. Jude's, or, a lot of the people we think of with cancer are older in life with support networks in place, but young adults, even now, but back then especially, were kind of this invisible, untalked about cancer group.
Yeah,
And
definitely. You don't
um,
really hear. Yeah. Yeah.
so anyway, there was certainly a connection to that group, and the more that I would talk with and learn from, we would hear that they have all these unmet needs during and after treatment. That many of them um, feel disconnected from the life that they once knew. They felt like the power just kind of went out on their life after cancer, and it's a developmental period that is just so full of important milestones that it takes those who live, it takes many years to get some semblance of kind of getting back on track. And so um, the beginnings of True North Treks happened at that point where, connecting with the reconnecting powers of nature. I was also working a lot in mindfulness and contemplative practices clinically and with my research, knowing how also that can be very grounding and reestablishing. And then, this population, with one of their biggest complaints being they feel like they don't know anybody like them. So the power of deep social connection with people who have been through a similar experience. And so those things kind of swirled around for a long time, and we eventually just decided to do something about it, and we started True North Treks.
And it provides an opportunity for extended time together. So there's like there's a little bit of like a group therapy dynamic. There's a restorative power of nature. Um, and then there's also, you said, mindfulness practice as well. You teach that, or that's a part of what you all do.
Yeah, fundamentally, those three things, we call them our three crucial connections. The one is connecting to nature after being through something as unnatural as cancer and its treatment, connecting with others who have walked a similar path in as non-group therapy way as possible on purpose. I'll
Uh
talk more
huh.
about that if you want.
Yeah.
And then the last is connecting with ourselves through mindful awareness practices. So all three of those things are purposefully interlaid throughout the Trek experience to to create this space with others that, like you said, is extended period of time in nature with other people for, to recharge and reconnect in different ways.
What are some of the things that you see happen with on these trips? You go on these trips as well, right?
Yep, yep.
So you talked a little bit about kind of what the intent is and kind of how it's laid out. What do you see happen over the course of how many days? Or I guess it varies a little bit,
Yeah,
right?
we have a couple different models. We started out going into the backcountry for a week on backpacking excursions, and then we realized that we could really serve a lot of other people who were either overweight or just physically deconditioned from treatment by going on canoes as well. So we do backpacking and canoeing treks, and those are usually 5 to 6 days in the backcountry of Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Minnesota, Michigan. And then we also have a retreat facility in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan that butts up against the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore.
Uh-huh.
And that is a incredible in nature type of a place for people who still want to do what we do, but can't get away for a whole week or don't want to sleep outside in grizzly bear country. And they
Right.
can still
Yeah.
get connected in lots of similar ways, but it's more of a abbreviated light experience. And so, but to answer your question, what do I see happen? I would say the most consistent thing that happens is this kind of buzz and electricity between participants when they come in contact with and spend time with other people like them. There's just, it's electric. I get, chills. Something is happening energetically. I can feel it when I watch and witness these deep connections happen very quickly for
It's
many
because of
of
their
them.
shared experiences, because of what they've gone through, or is it more than that?
Yeah, I would say there's sometimes just a knowing that they're with other people who have had their lives upturned for similar reasons. But then also over the course of the trek, there are conversations on trail, in the canoe, around a fire, in a tent.
Yeah.
And we explicitly train all our guides to not make it a cancer support group. We don't probe with questions about, now, Johnny, it's your turn to share your cancer experience. We
Okay.
basically let them do all of that, and they do it right away and without any prompting. And we just kind of sit back, and we have all of our mindfulness yoga guides. They're trained to lead mindful meditations and yoga. They're all mostly mental health professionals, social workers, counselors,
Hmm.
psychologists. And we also have to do a bit of an untraining on them to also just help them come to the trek as themselves, as the great, cool people that they are, who know how to be authentic and congruent and kind of Rogerian in their approach,
Uh-huh.
without overstepping that. We have to, some people we've had to just help coach to not keep that therapist hat on. And it's nice
So
to
like the
have.
distance, so it's like distance, like to be a therapist versus to be themselves in that kind of, is that what you mean? Like sort of,
Yeah, many young adults have just felt head shrunk so many times and
okay.
places in their treatment at the cancer center. Some love it and they really benefit from it. It can be helpful. But our overall purpose is to bring these mental health folks there to teach mindfulness and yoga. And it's every now and then it's nice to have somebody there with some clinical skills in case somebody's having a bad time. They can pull them off trail and just connect with them and be like, "Hey, is everything all right?"
Yeah.
But otherwise, it's as, like I said, as non-group therapy as we can to keep it just kind of normal and non therapy-ish, for the vibe.
It has a supportive, the supportive aspect and
Very
the,
much.
for want of a better term, the therapeutic aspect emerges on its own. And it's
Yeah,
like,
very much so.
there's like a need there and that it just sort of comes out the
Yep,
process because of the need is so deep.
yep, for sure.
So you talked about mindfulness. How do you explain it to the participants? Also, how do you explain it to others too? Since you have, that's part of your research, been a part for years now, right?
Sure.
Yeah. How do you explain it? Do you all teach it in a secular way, non is it grounded in, one of the established approaches? Is it your own kind of modified approach, or what kind of,
Yeah,
yeah, talk about that and how that's brought into the program.
yeah, absolutely.
Wait,
So
programs. Yeah.
we um, um, we can't help but acknowledge its Buddhist origins and traditions, and we then very quickly will let people know that by no means are they needing to ascribe to any one particular spiritual tradition to benefit from mindful awareness practices. We define it. I usually define it as um, tuning in to our present moment experiences with qualities of openness and curiosity and um, you know self kindness. Um, I kind of avoid the word non judgment because I just feel like it's impossible to not judge. And instead, I try to go on the other side, which is more allowing and accepting and with warmth and gentle kindness. Um, but beyond the definitions, we try to get people practicing immediately because that's
Right.
really the best way to know what we're talking about. And then through jumping right into practices, um, we do some education on, what things, it is and what it isn't. And we try to, kind of help people find it wherever they are and disabuse them of certain expectations they might have about what should be happening. You're probably familiar that in most mindfulness teaching in a group base at least you do something called mindful inquiry after the practice is done. It's a Buddhist dialogue traditionally that happens between teacher and students where you we basically let people go around and share things they observed and noticed during that practice. We try to really keep it focused on those vocabulary like I observed the wind blowing my face, I noticed I was getting bored or antsy, and then we kind of help them sit with that and unpack it, and it can be validating for them, for other people who hear that, to know, okay, I wasn't the only one who was like, what the F is going on here.
Hmm.
Um, and it can also help people just kind of put together what it is we're doing and why. And again, it's if anything were to look like group therapy, that might, but we also try to keep it quite focused again on just helping them observe and notice their experiences in through this lens.
So these are different times you might do, like in the backcountry, like just sort of to sit or to a sitting meditation or walking meditation or some sort of um, mindfulness practice while engaged in activity,
Yeah.
maybe gathering wood or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Or
we,
yeah.
we, we, we usually start each morning with some kind of mindful movement in a
Uh-huh.
beautiful place along the river or on a mountaintop. We'll do some kind of yoga. And we usually end each day, depending on the group level of energy, around a fire where there'll be more of an extended practice. But then throughout the day, we just let wherever we are, dictate to us where we might pause, where we
Right.
might do a mindful silent paddle or a silent hike or eating or different things. And those just kind of show up, to us in different ways.
So I imagine you must have people, some people are like, I ask, like, why is this important? Like, why are we doing this? Like, how does this relate to anything else? And how will this benefit? Like, what do you see as, can you draw the connection between engaging in that kind of practice um, and sort of the benefits of it to the people involved in the program, to the cancer survivors and to others too that maybe that have been involved. Um,
Absolutely. And everybody comes to it from different places. Some have already done it and tried it and are proponents of it. Other people are somewhat skeptical.
mhm.
And, there certainly can be a dispositional personality aspect to it where you might help them see it slightly differently depending on maybe how, where they are um, interpersonally. But for at its base, we help people get in tune with things, and that can be as simple as really savoring and appreciating their morning coffee around a fire. And it can be basic stuff like that. And then other people, because of where they are, they take it to their cancer journey, and they bring it to impermanent concepts of impermanence, or different bigger things that can emerge when you sit and practice. So we see it manifest in different ways. We try to keep expectations low and let people know we're just here to plant some seeds. Our goal is not that you're going to walk away, all being yogis or meditators. Some of you may never do this again. Some of you, this might be the beginning of it. But we've collected data on our programs, and the majority, of people talk about feeling much more efficacious in their ability to continue to do this, which is for us like a huge win. If you can feel more confident and at ease with trying it, mission accomplished.
Yeah. So so it can really positively affect people long term. How does it help, or does it help? To what extent does it help with the experience of discomfort, which is very common with people going through chemotherapy, or just even being in the backcountry, and maybe having all sorts of, some still have health issues or have health issues. Also, it can be challenging to be in a canoe all day, or to be carrying a backpack, that kind of thing. So how does this sort of these practices, what you're describing, this process, affect kind of how people can manage or deal with unpleasant things in their lives, discomfort? Yeah. Does it relate to that in some way?
Most certainly. And again, we try to let people draw conclusions for themselves to the extent we can. But every day comes with some level of discomfort, whether it's a sore back from sleeping on the ground for the first time in a while, to being wet or maybe colder, or sore, like you said, after carrying a 40-pound pack or canoeing. And we certainly invite people to notice those sensations and to see if they might be able to have a different relationship with them versus what their automatic reactive self kind of says it should be. And so that's the beginning, sitting with challenges or difficulties that are kind of at that level on the continuum of severity. Those are on the low end. Those are kind of great practice tools, like the breath. But sitting with the sore muscles from hiking is a great way to help people see if they can have a different relationship with it. And then maybe over the course of the week, that might continue to evolve to sitting with other difficult things, like their fear of cancer coming back. Or
so sitting with, yes. Yeah. So sitting with means, like, as opposed to trying to like push it away or get rid of it. Like, what does that mean, sitting with? Like, how do you sort of explain that or think about that?
It's we use all kinds of metaphors, and usually, like, a lot of times nature has like the most amazing examples right in front of us.
Yeah.
But sometimes we'll talk about, you mentioned Rumi. It was awesome to see that last question. There's a lot of Rumi, a lot of other poetry happening all the time on our treks. And we'll talk about that guest house and the uninvited guest, the visitor, coming, and how you can try and keep the door closed, but some of these things will keep banging. And what would happen if you just took a deep breath and opened the door and saw what happened? And so there's, sitting with is to, engender some allowing, and doesn't always have to be pleasant or that you like it.
Yeah.
But it's almost kind of like, you're here, have a seat at the table. I see you. I'm not super happy you're here. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, but I acknowledge you're here. And that's kind of the sitting with. And we know from kind of emotion regulation research that the more we're able to expose ourselves, kind of like mini exposure therapy, the more we're able to expose ourselves to those unpleasant moments, if they're not so high on that severity continuum, but again and again and again, we can have a different relationship. They change a little bit, and we can begin to incorporate them into our new schema. and we never still will maybe like them or be happy about it, but we're able to tolerate it.
Able to tolerate it and be open. I remember hearing about that metaphor, that story in the Act. I think that can incorporate a lot of those sort of.
Yeah,
There's a whole
the drunken
books
uncle.
of them. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, there's all kinds of like colorful ways of thinking about of like presenting that same concept.
Yeah.
The outcomes that you've been able to improve, you have that study that came out. Um, what can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm at Northwestern for my day job, and I do a lot of outcomes research. And outcomes have always been, as a scientist, it's a super important part of just making sure we're listening and learning from the people that we're serving. And so, since our very first track in 2010, we have been asking them to complete a pre and a post survey. And for the first 5 years, it was just that. It was a set of crafted questions and items that dealt with our three crucial connections. So we asked questions about their connection to nature and to peers and to themselves. And then, in maybe 5 years in, we started administering some brief short forms from the Patient Reported Outcomes Measurement Information System, or PROMIS.
Mm-hmm.
And PROMIS was a measurement system I helped develop. I was involved in that here at Northwestern, so I was really close to what the measures assessed and their clinical utility, and how you could really see a person maybe be responsive or change in things like depression or anxiety or sleep. So we started giving these short forms of those three areas. And one season I had some extra blood spot collection materials in my lab, because we collect finger pricked blood to look at circulating inflammatory cytokines or different kind of proxies for bodily stress.
Yeah.
And so we had, I think it was like 19 people that season prick their fingers for us twice, at the beginning and the end. And we analyzed the data, and we saw that there were significant, and again, this is pre-post, single arm study, but significant changes, moving people from moderate depression and anxiety symptoms to mild or within normal limits, improved sleep, as well as significant changes in inflammatory responses from being a week, outside.
Do you think that those changes persist over time? Or maybe the better question is, to what extent do they? Right.
Yeah. I I know that from our lab research and other contemplative interventions we do, like yoga and meditation, we
Mm-hmm.
see the emotional changes last about 6 months before they start to wax. We see the physical, the fatigue, the physical function, the sleep, those last about 12 weeks before they start to decrease. And so, no, I still think that, um, you're and the inflammatory responses are also, those are probably acute responses.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think that you would see those persist. You would need to keep doing things, to work on that and keep them at a certain level, I guess.
Do they keep doing the keep doing part is, do they stay in touch with each other? Is there some, like there these are friendships that then provide like social support and
Yeah,
whatever else? Is that part of kind of what you all hope for, or
yeah,
observe?
yeah. So we have a couple ways that we try to help facilitate that, and then we also watch them organically do that. But we follow everyone in their social media and see from that how people are being there for each other and connecting with each other in different ways. Some people get together on their own. Some people do other programs with other cancer support organizations
Oh, wow.
with their person they met. We also have alumni treks, so you can go back and be with other people who've been on a trek in a different year or a different place. And we also let people, whether it's an alumni trek or not, we let people reapply to go again if they want to. We've had several people go on multiple treks. And then we also have free drop-in mindfulness classes twice a month on
Hmm.
Zoom that people can come and keep working on their practice that way.
Do people also continue the practice on their own? Like something, some elements of like what they learn on the trip or the trips, do they start to do that on their own to some extent?
I would say some people do, some people don't.
Yeah.
It's just we haven't done a intensive longitudinal impact study to see how many of these things are remaining.
Uh-huh.
Um, all we have are more anecdotal statements from people, things they'll shout out on social media about how much TNT has meant to them over the years, how it was a turning point for them, how it
Hmm.
changed their life. Like multiple people have said that, and
Yeah.
so systematically, I don't know how if this happens for the majority, but it certainly is enough to keep us going. Okay, good things are happening for some people here. So
So there's tremendous meaning for it,
yeah,
however that manifests itself. That's something
yep,
for many of the people. But dealing with COVID for you all, and still are, can you speak to like your response to like, did you learn like for other organizations out there, did you learn anything about what you could do that's going to actually impact your organization long term? Like
yeah,
if it's, doing things online more or, whatever. Could you speak to that a bit?
yeah, sure. We had to cancel our 2020 season outright. It was going to be our biggest one, and that's just when the shit hit the fan, and so we
Yeah.
canceled that and licked our wounds. And we actually though used it as a great year to regroup. We hired some new staff. We got a whole new data management system. So we used it to work internally on some of our processes, which was fantastic to be able to have that time. Um, and the next year, we sent out a survey to all of our alumni and to all of the people who've applied. We have a long waiting list. And we just asked them questions about how comfortable are you going on a trek? What would it take for you to be comfortable? What measures do you need to be in place to feel okay and safe?
Mhm.
We also started looking at other organizations like the Wilderness Medicine Institute, NOLS, and looked at some of their COVID protocols. And the good news is for us, we operate mostly outside. So our
Yeah.
backcountry treks outside of transportation to and from the trailhead, getting there in the airport, there were these little zones of risk. But then once we're out there, if we maintain some social distancing and change our sleeping so that people are sleeping individually in tents versus sharing tents, we could do some things to make it very safe. We also, COVID made us start what we're calling bubble experiences up at our retreat facility, where instead of us going there and offering full on treks, we actually are facilitating people bringing their own caregiver groups up there to use Walden, our retreat center, on
Yeah.
their own. We set them up with things to do. We show them where the trails are and where all these things they can engage in. But that's opened up a whole other avenue now of being able to get people outside and in nature just by, having these bubble experiences, people in their COVID bubbles.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you wrote about it in. By the way, I love the
Oh, cool.
old
You got
school.
that.
Yeah, I love the paper.
Thank
That's so
you.
nice. Yeah, it was a great idea. It's like old school. I'm sure a lot of people do. It's like versus just getting it, via email or whatever. That was a
Yeah.
really that was a great idea. I don't know who came up with that, but I love it.
That would be moi.
Nice. All right. Yeah. So talk about again for other organizations out there, probably interested. I work with a lot of nonprofits who have to figure out how to continue to get money coming in. What's your approach and kind
Yeah.
of your general approach, maybe some strategies that you have that have worked?
Yeah. I mean, I guess on one level is to practice what we preach, to keep building the muscles of sitting with difficult times and fear. Is this going to continue? Oh
Hmm.
my gosh, how are we going to do this? Like, there certainly have been periods of time where it's been somewhat unsteady based on money coming in or going out. Then all of a sudden, over time, also, we tell people. My grandpa Victorson would always his the quote that everyone still quotes of his is "Go slow and you'll go fast." and that has been a kind of a Vickerson family quote that we always say to each other. And TNT has definitely been based on that adage because we've all had to go slowly. It's none of our full-time main jobs where most people are doing it on a volunteer basis. And so we have to do it piece by piece, step by step. And over the years, we've grown. Now, the more we've grown, the more people, trust what we're doing. They can see that we have data. They can see that we're a good ROI for their $50 or more. And, so we do a lot of friend raising as much as we do fundraising. So we truly try to believe in making friends and partners without having an agenda to try and get money from them. I mean, it's really made it possible for us. And then those friends have friends, and it just kind of all. We also have a sustainability model called our Pay It Forward Pledge that we've had since the beginning, and it's where we provide everything for free to our participants, from their flights and all of the stuff. It's about $2,500 a person to go on a week-long backcountry trek.
Yeah.
Times 14. But then we ask them to help us fundraise about half of that when they come back for another participant. And so the Pay It Forward Pledge has just been a great way for us to have some money coming in as well as people knowing about us, because everybody spreads it out to their own networks.
And you find people participating in that, like we
do some more than others. Some kill it and overshoot the goal. Some undershoot it. Some never set up a page. But on average, we're probably between 85 to 95% at some point people completing their pledge.
So your funding is most.
So you can't go on a second trek unless you've completed your pledge.
Okay. So you're funded by like a lot of relatively little source, mostly little sources, and so you're not dependent. And then some foundations. Sorry.
And then some family foundations.
Oh, okay.
Where I would say they're not quite as little. They've been huge pillars, but we are also very supported by the 50, 100, 250 kind of donations that come through.
So you have like diversity and you have like some options, and if you lose a funding from one of the foundations, you still have money coming in.
Yes.
It's not a lot of organizations have they rely on, one large grant or two large grants at a time. And then once that's gone, there's an existential issue, right?
Yeah. We always are trying to diversify our portfolio and not get too addicted to the crack of one big donor. we try to, it can be really easy and appealing to be like, we don't have to chase our tail this year and do all these fundraisers because with this, but we always try. We're like, that's not a good long-term strategy. So we're always looking to diversify that.
Is there a thing that you've learned just being involved in starting and running a nonprofit all these years, and what you all do, that you is there a main lesson that you've learned that you would would be worthwhile for other folks starting or being involved in nonprofits who are involved in other nonprofits for them to hear? Is there a major lesson? That was a long way of just saying, what's your favorite, lesson learned that you'd like to share with other people?
Oh man, that was not on the list. And if it was, I missed that one. I feel like I could write. I am hopefully at some point going to write a book on lessons learned because I've had so many of them through this whole experience. But one of them, the first thing that popped into my head was kind of cliche and Nike, but it's kind of like, just do it. Whenever starting anything like this, you never know what's around the corner. You never know if it's going to last. You're putting yourself out there a bit. But at the end of the day, if it's true in your heart that you believe in what it is, just do it and see what happens. And there are some organizations that I've heard say, we don't need another young adult cancer support organization, because a lot of nonprofits are popping up all the time.
Sure.
And I say to that, I have yet to hear one young adult cancer survivor complain of
Complain.
the abundance of riches of all the things.
Right.
So it's like, just do it and start it and see what happens.
Uh-huh. So you see, like some people we all get, I guess, caught up with like analysis paralysis. Like you just kind of
Yeah.
think about it, and just starting it and not necessarily knowing like how it would, the how and all the
Yeah, I
details.
mean,
You just did it one step at a time.
yeah, I mean, of course, there was some thought about, we tried to put our thoughts about a
Uh-huh.
fundraising strategy and a business model, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
tried to read the book on nonprofit management. But at the same time, it's like we could do that for 10 years, and we just had to finally just do it and
Got
see.
it. Got it. So what's a book that, just out of curiosity, a book you recommend or like to give as a gift?
It's
What's
funny, yeah. I like that question. That's the one question that I was like, what book do I give? And um, again, it might be kind of cheesy business book, but
uh-huh.
it was one that a book. It was given to me by our biggest donor, the donor who helped us get our retreat facility. In my first meeting with him, before we had a relationship, I was coming to him to ask for money so that I could back out and we could actually hire a proper executive director. And this is probably like 3 or 4 years in. And I
Right.
was scared and
Yeah.
like, what the F are we doing? And he kind of said, David, I'm not, it's a great plan you've got here, but we're not going to do this. And he said, you can't and should not quit. He's like, you're the only one who cares as much as you do about this. And I've seen this happen. No one else is going to care at this point. Maybe someday, it's a good idea to exit, but not now. And he went to his back room and he pulled out a book called The Go-Giver. You may have heard of that. The
What's it? What is
Go-Giver,
it? Say it again. What is it?
The Go-Giver.
I've
And
never heard of that.
it was pretty popular about 10 years ago, maybe, in pop business book culture. And
Yeah.
it's a parable, but I would say it's a book about radical generosity. And it's a book about trusting that if you give everything away, good shit's going to happen. But it's not giving away to get the good shit. It's just trust that if you give away your book of contacts to your associate that you might be competing with, just kind of see what happens. And so that's a book I've given to my daughter. I've given to a couple other people over the years.
Yeah.
When we kind of get really protective and threatened about what we have and wanting to keep it and grow it, this book is just kind of about, see what happens when you just kind of give it back and give it to others, what might happen. It's a beautiful kind of any religion kind of concept, might posit these values. But so that was the first book that came to my mind that I have given to other people. But I'm a little embarrassed because it's not super, it's like this pop business book.
Yeah. It sounds like it was super impactful, and I love these interviews because I always come away with a reading list. So, and it's
Yeah.
great that I haven't read it and I've never heard of it. I don't remember hearing about it, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I saw a Rumi quote in one of the emails that came from True North Treks, and so I figured that might have come from you or from someone else. But so I was wondering what I love Rumi, and I could probably open up.
Here we go.
Yeah, find any. Yeah, that's great. So there's a Rumi book also potentially. Yeah, there's tons. What's your favorite Rumi quote?
Yeah, the one that I have taped up to my computer, that, for the longest time so I could see it regularly, is, let yourself be drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. You will not be led astray. And for me, that just really touched my heart, because I do get this strange pull all the time. And usually my conditioning tells me to, not listen to it. And it's a quote about trusting the voice from within,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe following it and seeing what happens. So that's been one that I really, really appreciate from him.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I haven't heard that one, so
How about you?
um, I don't know. There's a ton of them. I'm trying to.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I thought
No,
maybe.
no, no, no. So what I do is whenever I see a quote I like, I put it in Evernote. So I'm going to cheat, and I have probably I probably have here, let's take a look here. I probably have 30 or 40 Evernote quotes from Rumi, so I can just pick one real quick. Okay, this is one. I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's one that comes up and just so your task is not to seek for love, but to merely seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it.
Beautiful.
It's amazing, yes, so that how applicable someone from 800 years ago or so those. It's just it's like he is alive today speaking to us. So
yeah,
I really appreciate the time you spent here, and I want to stay connected and definitely really helpful kind of your description, kind of going through your experiences, going through what you all do, and appreciate just the generosity of your time here and sharing with us. Yeah.
Thanks, James. It's awesome connecting with you after so many years.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll talk again soon, I hope.